15 years ago, if you wanted to buy a phone, you had an almost unlimited variety of devices of all shapes and colors to choose from the first iPhones and Androids to whatever these things were. But today, I bring a more normal looking phone from what you'd expect from the time. This is the Nokia 5130 XpressMusic, a phone which, as the name implies, was designed with music in mind. And just by looking at the keys on the sides, this is more than evident. I had the opportunity to play with this phone at the end of 2009, when my dad gave it to me after my Nokia 5310 was stolen. The thing is, I didn't use this phone as much as my older Nokia 6120 for reasons that I'll explain later. From there, it's been used by several of my family members until I had to store it in a box. But now I'm gonna dust it up, insert my SIM card in it, and use it as my main phone for some time to see what it can do. The phone from the outside looks in relatively good shape, and that's because I replaced some parts of the case over 10 years ago. But even all these years later, I still haven't installed what protects the screen of the phone. To install the screen, I used regular school glue, and that was more than enough. I proceeded to remove the plastics after so many years, which felt so satisfying. Changing the cases of phones is something I love doing, and I wish we could do this with modern smartphones. I mean, just imagine you drop your phone and chip the paint or destroy part of it. You will only have to go and get a new case and replace the broken parts yourself, and boom. In like no time, you'll have your phone looking like day one. We've got a keyboard in the front, which is the original one and looks somewhat worn. The keys are a bit small but have good treble and feel nice to press. The keyboard has two buttons specialized for answering and hanging up calls, with this last one also doubling as the power button. The screen, as you can see, has an ink stain. This is usually due to strong blows, but in my case it appeared out of nowhere. For a while I remember it actually went away, but years later it came back, not alone but with this weird effect. The strangest thing is that the stain seems to have a life of its own. Some days it grows and other days it shrinks. And even the most strange thing is that the effect fully disappeared after using the phone for a few days. It's like the phone is healing itself. On the right side we have the volume up and down buttons that don't have enough trouble, which makes them hard to press. And finally, a slot for a microSD card. At the top we have the headphone jack, the charging port, the USB port whose only function is to transfer data to a computer, and a small hole for a strap. On the left side we can find the three buttons for music, which are flush with the body of the phone, but we'll be talking about those later. On the back we have the 2 megapixel camera without a flashlight, and the speaker that has this fun pattern that I actually like a lot. The cover is removable, which gives us access to the 1020 mAh battery, which for such a basic phone is actually a lot. And under the battery we can find the SIM card tray. This sound always brings back so many good memories. The first thing we will find when we turn it on is the typical interface of mobile phones that run Series 40, Nokia's proprietary operating system intended for mid-range phones based on Java. When I was a kid, I was so confused about Series 40, Series 60, Symbian, and so on, but now I understand that Series 40 has nothing to do with Symbian, and it's a much more basic operating system. Okay, I really like the Series 40 interface, the apps with their animations that jump at you, and the little sound it makes when moving through the menus really takes me back. Personally, I like this interface a little more than the one from Series 60 3rd edition, and much more than that of Android 1.6 that came out that very same year and that was ugly as hell. The good thing about Series 40 and 60 was that you could add themes to customize it to your liking. At school I used to see people with all sorts of themes ranging from Ben 10 to more naughty themes, and that people shared either via Bluetooth or even using infrared, which by the way this phone does not have. The $60 got you apps such as the calendar and its agenda, which is actually quite good. A reminder app that has missed notes from a decade ago. A calculator that could pass as a scientific one since it's very complete and comes with a lot of features. A unit converter that is also very complete. A basic audio recorder, the now extinct Microsoft Messenger, a world clock, the defunct Nokia App Store, and other various things such as the browser that when you open it, you will be surprised to see that it's not just any random browser, but Opera Mini that is already installed by default. With my SIM card in the phone, calls, basic messages, and so on still work today. Sure, as long as your carrier still supports 2G. Yeah, that's right, 2G, since this phone, despite having been released in 2009, it did not have support for 3G networks. But what's even more interesting is that in many countries, 2G has outlived 3G networks. If you want to go online, since it doesn't have Wi-Fi, you need to rely on mobile data. And at first I was shocked that my phone didn't load anything and kept throwing connection errors. I thought it was the APN for a second, but it was fine. Then I thought maybe it was the data packages for 2G that were discontinued, but it turns out that it was because the Edge or 2.75G reception is very bad. So I had to go record somewhere else because a simple forest or heck even a tree was enough to block all the signal. I don't know if this is because I live in the middle of nowhere or because this phone has really poor reception, or it could even be a combination of both. The Opera Mini browser it comes with is very old, and the funny thing is that it still offers you an update to Opera 5, but the download servers are long gone. In any case, I manually installed Opera Mini 7.1, which is a version from 2012, and it also offered me an update that I couldn't install because of that poor reception thing. It might be Opera Mini 8, but I'm not sure. But leaving this aside, all the searches you do on Google still work. The funny thing is that it's a mix between the old interface and a modern one, which feels like grabbing a time machine and taking a short trip to the past, without actually traveling to the past. I do have to say that it takes a while to load the pages due to the Edge connection. Back in the day, we could watch YouTube videos as evidenced by my history on the phone's homepage, and that was one of the reasons why I preferred my old Nokia 6120 with 3.5G and Symbian. But still, the newer Opera Mini manages to load the main YouTube page, and I was even able to search and enter my YouTube channel, something that not even more recent devices running Android 2.3 can do. Sadly, I can't say the same for the videos. The most surprising thing of all is that it still allows us to log into Facebook. While browsing, I came across this phone being sold for just 20 bucks. Yes, it's the same one I have in my hands. And who doesn't remember typing like an idiot due to the limitations of characters and the keyboard? Here I left a comment written on this phone. What's incredible is that you can still see and send messages. This is crazy because it's something that has already been removed even from Android 14 devices to force people into using their useless Messenger app. I tried to load the Apple website, and what do you think happened? Yeah, surprisingly it does load the website. It's a little bit of a mess, but you can at least see the content to a certain extent. I thought it was not going to work at all, but it did. I found that other websites like news sites and even Wikipedia articles still load. So if you want to do some quick research, this phone still has you covered. Okay, now let's see how good this phone is for what it was created for, music. In this regard, I was actually surprised by how loud it can get. It almost sounds as loud as my Pixel 6 Pro, which has 2 speakers. Just listen. The sound is not as HD, so to speak, and it has like a radio effect to it, and it distorts a bit. I don't know about you, but I personally love that it sounds like somewhat harsh, and I feel like it gives it a special touch. The phone comes with an app dedicated to music playback, which can be customized with different themes, which all look good in my opinion. And it even comes with an equalizer that has a couple of modes for multiple genres of music. As I showed you before, we have 3 buttons designed for music playback. Since they're flush with the device, they're difficult to press. We have a button to pause and another 2 to change songs back and forth. The bad thing is that it takes a while to go from song to song. Maybe it could be my SD card, but honestly I highly doubt it. When we listen to music, this part of the phone lights up with the shapes of the music buttons. But in my case, they have been erased and you can only see the lights without any shape. I tried to paint them back using nail paint that I took from my sister, but it didn't work. Maybe I should try using a darker color, but it's good enough for me. The camera is a little bit scratched, so don't take the results seriously. But still, even putting ourselves in the context of 2009, the camera is pretty bad. Photos, even with plenty of light, look like watercolor paintings. Colors are quite dull and the level of detail is not very good. Nokia with its high-end phones was undoubtedly the king in terms of camera quality until 2014-2015, but here they did a poor job. At night or in low light conditions, just judge for yourself. It also does not have a flash, so forget about photos in the dark. I put my Pixel 6 Pro next to it just for reference, and you can see phone cameras have come a long way. As for video, it records at a maximum resolution of 140p and 15 frames per second. The truth is that video coming from this phone is pretty bad. And well, this is what you got if you spent $60 on a cell phone in 2009. In the past, I used to go to several sites to download games like archim.net to download all kinds of themes, apps, and games. Unfortunately, I have already lost most of the things I downloaded, but the phone still has some fun built-in games like the classic Bounce game, which, if you didn't know, the people behind this game is a company called Ravio, that in the future will develop the famous Angry Birds game. Or rather, a few months later, since Angry Birds would come out for the first time at the end of 2009. The game was very fun and I completed it several times. And the other game it comes with is Snake 3D, an evolution of the Snake game from the first Nokia phones. That game was already considered a classic when this phone came out, but honestly I didn't like the game as much as the original. The Snake just won't react to the press of a button since it has like a delay or something, so you have to predict its movement so you don't kill yourself. Anyway, as a time killer while you wait for your turn at the hairdressers was fine. I put my microSD card from my Nokia 6120 and most of my games and emulators are not compatible with Series 40, except for a few titles like this Ben 10 game, which I actually bought at one point. I don't know if you remember the Cartoon Network ads where you could buy games just by sending a message with a code. I bought this game for another phone that was also stolen. Oh my goodness, the amount of phones that were taken away from me at that point is insane. Here I had no choice but to pirate the game, and as you can see it doesn't have any resolution problem or anything. Even the little lights turn on sometimes, but honestly I remember this game to be a little bit more fun since now I've come to realize that it doesn't even have sound. The bad thing about pirating games for these old platforms was that you often got the resolution wrong. A lot of games I had just draw in a little square in the corner. This is the case of the classic Worms from 2007, so if you have farsightedness it would be impossible to play due to the small size of the screen. Luckily this is not a case of Age of Empires 2, which is perfectly playable. I had no problems with the resolution issue and it runs great. When it comes to emulators now, the ones I have for my Nokia 6120 work, since they're all made for Symbian. On the internet I found this GameCube Color emulator. The Pokemon Crystal game runs quite well and the only drawback I see are the controls, but it's better than nothing. Going to a more demanding game, we have Donkey Kong Country, which I would say is relatively playable but not the best experience. I turn out the sound and the audio doesn't play correctly, but for such a basic phone this is actually quite impressive. I went back online and found this NES emulator that comes with several games like the original Mario by default, and the game runs fine, but it doesn't have sound so you have to turn it on in the settings. But even on, the audio sounds very weird, but at least it's playable. Then we have this tanks game that I remember I used to play on the television of my mom's friend, and it brought me back in time at least a decade ago. Then we have this Aladdin game, which I thought was a SNES game. The experience could be better, but it's perfectly playable. Anyway, I guess this is probably one of the most complex games this phone will be able to emulate. And if you wanted to emulate more powerful consoles like the SNES or even the PlayStation 1 back in the day, we would have to switch to Symbian since even the primitive Android from this time was still garbage for emulation. Despite being more basic than other phones from 2009, I have many good memories with this phone, and especially with my younger brother who used it more than me. This phone for calls, messages, and even library browsing can still get the job done. Music is were still somewhat strong, and maybe you could even use it as a portable MP3 or even as a radio. Originally I was gonna cover more of this phone, but that ink stain on the screen bothers me a lot. But if I get another model in a better condition, I will update this video. But until then, I'll see you guys in another day. Bye.